And make sure I'm actually live. StreamYard says I'm live.
What do they know?
Oh, here we are. We're live.
Okay.
And I am going to copy the link on my personal page.
So you're based in Indiana?
Yeah, I'm right by South Bend and Mishawaka.
Okay, I haven't been to South Bend since about August, since about the end of last summer, almost a year.
Yeah, cool.
It's a nice little club.
Yeah. The drop's nice. It's that's where I got my start, but I didn't start until I was 50, so late bloomer.
It's never too late to figure out you're good at something.
Yeah,
There's
no doubt.
never a bad time to figure out you're good at something.
I don't know if I'm good or not. All right, folks, if you're watching, we're back at the Behind the Bits podcast. Obviously, the Behind the Bits podcast is a podcast that you can find on all the apps. All you got to do is type in Behind the Bits. I'm talking to Matt Brown today. How you doing, Matt?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing today, Scott?
Good. So, Matt, you're a Chicago comic. I do want to remind everybody who's watching that if you put any comments up, I will see them and I can put them up. We're gonna talk about half the interview here live, and then for the rest of it, you're gonna have to subscribe to the podcast and listen to the rest. So we'll get into the good stuff after we get to know each other a little bit. So yeah, that's the way that's going to work. So you get anywhere from 15 minutes to a half hour with us, and then you got to download the podcast. So Matt, you're a Chicago comic, and you started at a very young age. How young were you when you started?
So when I started writing for stage, I was actually 16.
Okay.
And I started performing, and I moved to Chicago to do comedy at 18.
Okay. So the writing part, let's talk about that. Were you writing like monologues, or were you writing actual jokes or bits, or what were you doing?
It was very interesting. For the first couple of years that I was writing, and then for the first about 9 months that I was actually doing stand-up, from about ages 18 to 19, I was obsessed with a good one-liner. I have always really liked older school comedy and more of that Moms Mabley, Joan Rivers, Don Rickles sort of real to the point kind of joke. And sort of people who think that you sort of get to the joke quickly think that it's a little old-fashioned. But I think it's a really important stage in development you have to go through, because to be able to make something that's long-winded interesting, you have to know how to be interesting for a little bit of time.
Yeah.
They make you do 6-minute sets for years before you get to do 15 and 20 for a reason.
Yeah. That makes sense.
So you mentioned a ton of one-liners, limitless one-liners.
So you were just writing, just filling up notebooks.
I literally, no. I was so organized about it. I had a Google Drive.
Oh, okay.
I had everything organized. Yeah. I was such a type A nerd. And it's funny, I got more written when I was in high school because I lived in a small town, and I find being out of the city, I'm much more productive. When I moved to this city, I had like 10 single-space pages of just one-liners organized by topic. And then I had 2 movies that I'd written just to have in the back pocket.
Holy cow. It's funny. I have always, since I started, I wrote all my stuff out longhand. And when the whole pandemic stuff started and I was working from home, I was in front of my computer all the time. So it wasn't easy for me to go to my notebook and back to the computer to work and stuff like that. So I just started a OneNote that I that I started adding to and making new notes on it. And now I've got that synced with my phone, so I'm doing that versus the writing it out longhand now. So I can
I
dig
just
that.
similarly started sort of like a little similar process because like this is my comedy notebook I've been using for a while. I call
Uh-huh.
her the Underground Railroad because she's black and been through everything. And like there's like legal pads and paper clips and post-it notes and all this stuff. And like I like to keep it longhand because I feel like I remember better and I feel like I'm able to keep a little bit more of a like when I'm getting up a lot, I feel like I'm able to keep like a better relationship with it. But
Right.
and I'll show you guys this because it's really cheap. Um, I bought this little like 11-inch laptop for like $200
Uh-huh.
on Amazon, and I literally just keep Google Docs in there because I feel like I can keep better records as far as word count and how much material and all that stuff on
Yeah.
just a totally separate device.
Yeah. That's a very good idea because
Because it's like, how many fucking empty extra cell phones do you have in your house? How
yeah.
many just stupid, just like barely dead laptops do you just keep around so you don't want to throw away?
Yeah.
Spend $200 on something you're going to use.
Yeah, no doubt. It's funny because I almost lost my original notebook one time, and that freaked me out so bad because I can't remember anything. And
No, no
and
terrible memory. I have, because I just moved, I have every notebook, every joke I've ever written since I was like 17 years old on paper in a
uh
box.
now you got me right at the beginning. You mentioned three comics that are actually maybe before your parents' time.
Yes.
So you got Don
True.
Rickles, Moms Mabley, and Joan Rivers. I
Oh,
mean, those are names that I know. How did you get exposed to them?
I was lucky enough to spend a lot of time and have a really close relationship with my grandmother,
Okay,
who was born in 1939.
there you go.
Um,
Yeah.
so I really like my instincts for everything. I am a little uptight and a little old school and a little kind of like that because I was really raised by a very proper 104-year-old woman.
Uh-huh.
And so like I really like a lot of 60s and 70s television and comedy. I think David Brenner is one of the funniest, most forgotten about people
Oh yeah.
that won Emmy awards and filled theaters, and everyone's like, David how?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And it's like, if you don't know your 70s comedy, you're missing a lot of like references for, I think, what makes today's style what it is. I have
Right.
more modern people that I like, but like my really foundational people, like my joke to all my friends is, if you started comedy after the year 1990, don't talk to me.
Hmm.
Like that's like
Yeah.
I'm old school. I'm old
Yeah.
school.
That's great. And when I watched a couple of your clips and the longer one that's on your website, you it's funny because you reminded me a little bit of a Don Rickles, Joan Rivers type thing because
Thank
you're
you.
talking to the audience, bringing them in with you, and you made it natural. It wasn't like forced or anything like that. So I respect people that can do that because that's difficult.
It's work. It's work, but it's the only way I know how to do comedy, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you just gotta do it. I did it my way, just like fucking
Right.
Frank Sinatra.
So you're I know from being friends on Facebook that you came from a small town, Springfield, which is
Yeah.
it's not as small as my town that I was from, but it's pretty small.
Well, I say Springfield because I lived in two small towns that are like 800 and 1,100 people next to it,
Okay.
but no one would recognize them, and it would
Yeah.
like tell people where my parents lived.
Right.
So I just say the town that's 20 miles away.
Uh-huh. So I grew up
Yeah.
in Lakeville, which is about 20 miles away from South Bend, and I always say South Bend because it's the same.
Yeah. Because it's like, if I tell you which small town of 800 people, it will take you 30 seconds to find my mom at her job.
Yeah.
So we're just not doing that.
Oh, that's great. So between 16 and 18, you're writing all this stuff. So what is the impetus of you writing all this? Did you see at 16 that you wanted this was going to be your path? You were going to be a comic, or were you just writing it down to test it out, or what was going on in your head at that time?
Well, there were two kind of pushes. So the push that was like a little bit more like longer path was that actually from the ages of 11 to 18, I trained to be an opera singer.
Okay.
For 7 years, I was in lessons like 4 to 6 days a week,
Oh wow.
singing in 3 different choirs, singing at universities. The music competitions I won the summer before I moved to Chicago paid for me to move to Chicago.
Wow.
Like that, I am a pretty good comedian, but I was still a better musician.
Yeah.
And so I had been doing classical music for years and years and years. I sang in 9 languages, learned how to speak 4 of them, and I had just sort of been learning all these great, like, amazing classical music and all this beautiful, beautiful language it's all set to. But I wanted to have my own words out there
Uh
because my teachers in school were always telling me, Matt, you're a great writer. Matt, you're a great writer. Matt, you need to invest more in this. Matt, you need to pay more attention to this. So
mhm.
it was always like I had something to say, but it was like where, how, why, what's the place for it? And so that was just sort of in the back of my mind forever. And
Mhm.
then around the time I was 16, yeah, it was 16. It was like right when that junior year started. I don't know how or why. Don't know how or why, because it was before she died. It was the summer before she died. Joan Rivers, for some reason, popped up in my YouTube recommendeds. And it was not her Fashion Police stuff that was on when I was in high school. It
Right.
was her hosting The Tonight Show in like 1981.
Yeah. Yeah, I
And
remember
so
that.
I saw this loud Jewish woman with this big blonde hair, wearing a ton of makeup and fake jewelry and obnoxious clothes. And I said, that's who I am.
Uh-huh.
I just said, she's screaming. She looks like a freak. She does not care. And everyone's down for the ride. That's who I am.
Yeah.
And so then I just sort of obsessively started watching everything I could find and reading every book I could get my hands on because
Uh-huh.
that's just, I'm a nerd.
Uh-huh.
And I really just said, okay, when I first Googled her, it said writer, comedian, actress. So I said, okay, I guess I'm a writer and a comedian. I guess that's what I want to do then.
Uh-huh.
I guess that's this other path. And then I just sort of pursued that very Midwestern and naively.
Yeah, no doubt. So do you feel like do you still sing, by the way?
I do sing in my shows.
Okay.
Not fucking Massenet. There's no
Yeah.
Mozart. There's no
Okay.
conductor. We're not. You don't come see me in a comedy club and then I pull back the curtain and there's a 40-piece choir, just
Uh,
like in church robes. That would be fun. Yeah, no, I do sing in my act, and I think once the economy is recovered from Corona and like touring looks normal again, like 3 to 5 years from now,
yeah.
like 'cause that's how long I really think it's going to take for the industry to like behave again.
Yeah, I
I
agree.
would love to go out on the road and do like the small clubs that I do with a pianist
Uh-huh.
and maybe like a bass or a guitar player. That'd be
Oh,
fun. That'd be a lot of fun.
yeah, that's cool. Because I mean, you put so much effort into that, and then you kind of did a left turn and went down the comedy route. I
It's a
know
lot of
that,
transferable skills, though.
yeah,
It's a
yeah,
lot of transferable skills.
yeah, and that's what I was going to mention because you with the singing, first of all, you're getting more comfortable in being in front of people, in front of an audience, and things like that. But also the singing, comedy is very um, good. Comics have a rhythm and a almost a song to the way they do their delivery.
Mhm.
Even the ones, even deadpan ones like Stephen Wright, they're,
Yes.
yeah, there's a real rhythm there, and I know that studying music would definitely help you there.
And it especially helps in when, for me, this is where I really see it, when I'm trying to figure out um, the best way to do a joke or why something isn't working or why the beginning isn't but the ending isn't or
Mhm.
whatever. When I'm trying to fix a joke, that's when I really feel like all my musical training comes in because it's like I'm pretty confident the words are fine. How I'm doing it is the problem.
Mhm.
And that's where you feel those things where, okay, maybe if I do this quietly, this will work better. Or
Right.
maybe if I decide to go a little less angry and a little bit more in a different emotional direction, then
Mhm.
it'll work better. Or
Right.
what if I save the loud for the end? Or what if I do the punchline quietly, or I slow down for the punch instead of speed
Uh-huh.
up into it?
Yeah.
Those are all the things where it's like, how am I driving the car? Because there's nothing wrong with the car. How am I driving it?
Right. And that's funny. That's what all the old school people talk about is the way it's not so much what you say most of the time, it's how you say it. And when you deliver a punchline properly, you get
Mhm.
10 times the response you do as if you do it improperly.
Oh
And I
yeah,
just
and then also, how many times have you been watching, and especially this is with an experienced headliner, where they're sort of 20 minutes into their 45, they're like halfway through their hour,
mm,
and they get into that rhythm, like you say, and they might say something that's not even funny, but you laugh because it feels right and it sounds right.
yeah.
Once they sort of get you into the rhythm of how they talk and how they see things and what they're doing,
Uh-huh.
it's almost like a call and response and less like a that amused me.
Yeah, yeah, yep, exactly. I wanna make sure, we, give Katie Michelle a shout out there. You
Uh,
sang at her wedding.
oh, that's my sister.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
she
no, I sang the what did I sing at her wedding? I sang Schubert's Ave Maria at her wedding.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Or maybe it was the Bach one. I don't know. She got married a long time ago. She's my older sister. We're gonna put
Okay.
it that way. She was my older
Uh-huh.
sister. And that might have been like shit, like 7 or 8 years ago. It was a long time ago.
Oh,
A
yeah.
life.
Now, how old are you now? I can't tell ages.
If you had to guess, because I've lived about 3 lives. If you had to guess, how old would you say?
I'd put you at about 24.
Okay. I am 22.
Oh, wow. Okay.
22. And most people, it's funny because January of this year, when the year started, I was the host of Comedy Bar. They select a host for a whole month, and I did from New Year's Eve to the end of January. And I have my birthday in January, and I mentioned something. Oh yeah, no, it's nice to be here because I just had my birthday on Thursday. And then
Mhm.
he was like, "Oh, how old you turn?" And I said 22. 4 people spit out their drinks. I felt like I was in a cartoon. They're like, I thought you were 28. You've been doing this for 10 years. What? You're 22? You're 22? I thought you were older than me. Literally, everybody, because it was after the show, everyone had left. It was just staff and management. Like, I thought you were older than me. What the fuck? I was scared of you.
Yeah, you do carry yourself well. I've got 2 kids, one's 30 and one is 26,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm thinking back to, uh, both my kids also carried themselves pretty well, but when my son was 22, he was still pretty out there. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's age is so hard when you get my age because I turn 56 next week. So when you get my age, everybody looks 12. They either
Oh,
look 12
totally.
or about my
Oh,
age.
totally. And then there's also the thing of, and I'm sure like your kids are probably like this, like after a while they like stop counting. So they're like, you've probably been 50 to them for about 8 years.
Yeah.
Like it's not moving. I'm not updating it. It's fine.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Yeah, it's
think
like
it's probably
50.
more than 8, but yeah, I dig that. So the music takes you to Chicago, big city Chicago. So from
Mhm.
the time you got to Chicago, how long did it take you to get on stage to actually do stand up?
Oh, a week. I was in it to win it.
Yeah.
I had places to go, people to see, stuff to find out.
Mhm.
And it was really funny. I the first place I ever got up actually ended up being my home club.
Okay.
The first place I ever got up at is the Comedy Bar, which I mentioned earlier.
Uh-huh.
Their main location is right in downtown Chicago and River North, which is we get so many tourists, which is
Mhm.
why it's the best club to work at because if you're funny to tourists who have been drinking all day, you're funny anywhere, anytime, any place.
Yeah.
If you can wrestle those people on Saturday at 11, you're fine.
Yeah.
You're fine. They're from Tulsa and they've been drinking since 2 p.m.,
Uh,
but maybe with lunch, maybe
yeah.
not. So that's really where I learned how to do stand up because the first month or two, I only went a couple places because I was 18, didn't believe in a fake ID, and so I was only going to places that serve food.
Mhm.
Oh, my friend Javier from high school commented, "Hi, Javi, I miss you too. Whenever I can travel again, I'm coming back to Springfield and I'm going to get an IV for the tequila. My mom's a nurse. I know who to
Uh,
call. I'm getting an IV for the tequila."
uh.
Um, Yeah, but that was like really where I got up a lot, and I would only go to places that had food because I was afraid to get carded. And then
Uh,
I realized that if you walked in with five guys that everybody recognized in the middle of a conversation with them, no
mhm.
one's going to card you. And then what I learned after about a year is that if you're wearing orange lipstick and have a light beard, no one's going to card you because you're the bouncer's scared. The bouncer's like, you either belong here or you're gonna bite my ear off like that's one of those anything could happen. Do you have like a dove in your wallet that you're gonna bite the head off like Ozzy
Yeah.
Osbourne? Okay. Like you look a little unhinged. You
Yeah.
just look vaguely unhinged until you hear me talking. I'm harmless.
Yeah.
But otherwise, yeah. So I sort of had to maneuver all sorts of ways to be able to get out and go around and get up as much as I wanted to. I would get booked for shows, and I remember one time they would like they had to talk the owner of the venue into letting me come for months because I was like only 19. And then when they finally got me in there, I could only do my set. I was like walked in and walked out like an escort. I felt like a hooker. I felt expensive. I felt way more expensive than like the $20 in the drink tickets that I
Yeah.
because I was 19.
Yeah, no doubt. So you must have made an impression fairly early if they're asking for you when you're just 19.
Yeah, well, I started in August of 2016, and then I was producing at Laugh Factory before I turned 19 in January.
Wow.
I started with a couple really ambitious, really smart people.
Mhm.
And when people believe in you and they think you're different and they see that you like to work hard, they want to give you a chance. Because
Mhm.
I always have felt like a little more recently, I feel a little bit more settled, so to speak, in sort of how I feel about what I'm doing.
Mhm.
But for the longest time, it was always I need to be working to be worthy the shit that people are asking me to do.
Mhm.
Because I felt like I was always getting shit just a little bit ahead. And it was always like, okay, we really need to be worth this so that way we get to do it again in this year.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to fuck up so bad that you have to take a step backward.
Right.
That's never fun. And we've all had our big bombs in big places and
Mhm.
just kind of avoid people.
Yeah.
And you just really try. My thing was that I always just wanted to try to be worth what people were asking me to do. Because
Right.
I was getting asked to do a lot very early on, like
Mhm.
immediately. I was actually producing comedy showcases before I'd ever seen one.
Yeah.
And I didn't really even know what they were because I knew what open mics were because of the internet, and I knew what stand up was at clubs and theaters because of specials. But the
Mhm.
whole concept of anything happening in the middle, I was too Midwestern and grew up on a farm. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
My sister went to high school in a convent. What are you talking about?
Right.
I'm too Midwestern for it.
Yeah.
I knew nothing. I was
Yeah.
very ignorant, like fine with it.
I see in your personality, and tell me if I'm wrong, I see in your personality that you're kind of like me, that when somebody asks you to do something and they're expecting B, you always go to A plus.
Oh, totally.
You always want to blow them away.
Totally. Totally. I always want to do the extra step. And it's not even, I feel like I have something to prove, not to them, but to me.
Yeah.
Because I'm the one who always sets the challenge because they're asking me because they think I can. They're not asking me because they think I'm going to fail. They don't want
Right.
their show to suck. They clearly, by stretching out and saying, hey, I know you've only been doing this for a year and a half, but can you do 30? Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
And you do the work and you try and learn how to stretch things out and make things like a little bit more enjoy your pauses and really try to enjoy your time up there before you have the full time to be up there.
Right. Right. And that, it's funny. Everybody I talk to that has achieved any amount of success has been thrown into situations that they weren't ready for, but they said, okay, I'll just do it.
Can I tell you the prime I wasn't ready, but I figured it out story, which I think will be just inspirational for anyone? Okay. So I had a friend who moved to Chicago from Indiana. He'd been here a couple months. He said, "Matt, I have my first show. It'd mean the world for for you to come." And I was like, "Sure, whatever." I was not booked that night. It was like a Thursday or something. All I wanted to do was drink 4 beers and not stand up. That's all I had planned for that evening, and just be nice for my friend and be there for my friend
Right.
who was so new to the city. Well, I knew the producers, but I'm never that person. When I go to hang out at a bar, when I go to hang out at a show, I don't ask to get up. I'm not that person. I knew the producers. I said hi. I hugged people. I bought people $2 beers. I didn't ask to get up. I'm not that guy. So I'm sitting in the audience enjoying the show. It's fun people. It's people I hadn't met before. I love when I meet new comics and I've never seen them before and they're great. Like I love all those fun surprises.
Right.
Well, there is someone who's from Chicago who writes for Saturday Night Live named Chris Red, who was supposed to headline the show. And he was running late because when you come in from out of town and you have a fucking Emmy, you do like 7 shows in a night.
Yeah.
You're kind of all over the place. And so the producers were texting him and he was just like, "I'm really held up at this other spot. I'm sorry. I'm going to be this amount late. I'm really sorry. I'm doing my best to hit everything I said I could do." And because I'd hate to cancel on you. And so the producers literally, his name Brad Rickert, tapped me on the shoulder and he said, "Matt, Chris is late. We don't know how late he's going to be. Can you just get up until whenever?" He literally said, "I don't know if it's 5 minutes or 45. I have no idea when he's getting here. Can you get on stage until whenever?" And I did 28 minutes of stand-up with no preparation.
Wow.
None. I didn't have a notebook. I thought I was going out to watch my friend and buy some people I hadn't seen in a while some beers. I literally went out there with like $40 and my ID. I did 27 minutes with no warning. Chris came in, saw my closer, and then as they were introing up, he was like, "Thanks for helping out, man. You're really good. I like that." And then
wow. And
I just had to be there.
Yeah.
If you're a dick and you don't support your friends, you don't get to open for people with Emmys.
Yeah.
That's more. If you're an asshole, nothing good happens to you.
That's a good thing to remember. Now, that set, you're doing 27, 28 minutes. Did you do stuff off the cuff? Did you do stuff that you remember? Did you work the audience? How did that go?
My style is to always mix everything. I cannot do the same set twice. Literally. I typically know where I want to start, and I always have my 1 or 2 openers that I'm using at the moment in the back of my head. But I sort of take whatever jokes I've been doing, what I've been trying to fix, where I'm at emotionally, how the audience is receiving me, what they look like to me as far as what they've laughed at before, if they're older, the ethnic references I can make in regards to myself or not. All those things, I'm constantly making all those choices in the minute. Because when you're lucky enough to have a lot of material, it's never "oh fuck, I hope this joke works." It's okay, I hope I make the next right decision. Because I know I will have something that will make them happy. I just gotta find it. And so when you really aren't planning at all, your first 5 minutes are a little more, and especially when you're drunk, your first 5 minutes are a little bit more, "Oh, okay, this is who's here. Okay, this is how they're picking me up." And then you're able to go into what you're doing. But I'm always doing a mix of stuff I've written, an improvised tag on what I've written, improvisation with the audience, and then written material, because I always have an opener and closers that I'm working with. But I really let the middle be playtime, because the reason I never do jokes the exact same way or a story the exact same way with the exact same words every single time is because I sang Hugo von Hofmannsthal's librettos, and I learned plays by fucking Edward Albee, and guess what? I'm not fucking Shakespeare.
Yeah.
I'm not so special all this shit has to be set in stone and that it's so perfect it can't move.
Right.
I don't have a Pulitzer.
Yeah.
I don't have a Tony Award. So I like to have good ideas and be a good personality and be open and be receptive and have material that can reach. but that doesn't mean it's got all commas in the same place.
Right.
And even that I do all parts of a bit sometimes.
Right. And for live stand up, it's rare to see really good spontaneity, and spontaneity really, that's a crowd knows when it's happening. The people obviously who can work the crowd well, or people who start a set and say, wow, that's not working, let's go this direction, and they can turn on a dime and make that happen. That's really magical. I know that's something I can't do, so I like to see that in people, and
it's
audience
really
appreciates
fun.
it.
It's really fun for the audience because, like you said, they can definitely tell when it's an authentic, not gonna happen again moment.
Yeah.
Like, I remember one time, this is just an example of one of those moments that could never happen again. She was sitting up front. There was a woman sitting up front, and she was sitting by herself. And she clearly wasn't upset that she was sitting by herself, because she was like dressed great, and like the hair was done, and like she got the food she wanted. Like, she clearly was taking herself out on a date, and she was great about it. She had the loudest, best laugh I've ever heard in my entire life. She sounded like Michael Jackson's chimp. Like, she had the most laugh I have ever heard out of like a 30-year-old white woman in my life. And like, that's also my target demo of women between 25 and 45. That's who loves me more than anybody. Straight guys really like me. Teenagers love me. But those like young to middle-aged women are always down for me. And so I just felt like every 45 seconds I was just making references to like throwing her a banana peel from being at the goddamn zoo. Because like, again, just these wild animal noises every 45 seconds. And it's just this playtime of, that's not gonna happen again. It's not gonna happen again.
Yeah. Yeah, that's that type of stuff, that magical type of stuff, audiences just eat that stuff up. And I've seen it, and it's the best thing ever. It's funny. I'm a fan of Nate Bargatze, and we went to see him in Indy towards the latter part of last year, and on the same tour he came to South Bend. I said, well, it's the same tour, let's go see it. Funny thing is he did the exact same stuff, and I love him. I mean, he's funny as hell, but he did the exact same stuff. And
that's the way a lot of people have to work. Because some people feel like they can't remember it if it's not in an order.
Yeah.
I've heard that from some people. It's like, if I don't do this, then this, I feel like the first 10 minutes are all fucked up.
Yeah.
That's how some people work like that. And then also what I've understood from going online and reading contracts and being nosy is that a lot of times when you're working on a special, they like sort of demand that it's written all ahead of time and out and seen and practiced in a certain way over a certain period of time.
Wow.
So like, because they want to see every joke before they put it on their damn network.
Yeah.
Like when you're Wanda Sykes, I feel like you and your production company have a tad more liberty, but like you're not necessarily working with censors, but it's just like, do you have to say that? Do you have to?
Yeah.
You have to.
The funny thing about his two sets was, in Indy, I could tell he wanted to be there. In South Bend, I could tell he didn't want to be there.
Why do people think that small towns are beneath them? It's always the best audience.
Yeah.
It's always the best audience.
Oh yeah, and he had more people in South Bend than he had in Indy too. It was a smaller venue.
For entertainment, because you might not get another comedian on that level, or like another concert for maybe 6 weeks. So this is the fun thing to do for a while. Yeah.
I was, everybody loved it, but I had something to compare it to, which was the exact same thing when he did it better. So and then it's kind of, it was disappointing, but it's kind of neat to see that, because that, we're people too. And guess what? We have shitty days. And I could just tell he was having one.
I really enjoy seeing, because it's so funny to me, because people always think, oh, I would never feel comfortable getting on stage and being improvisational and not having everything planned, because there's like, I feel like I'm not very stable for the audience. When you are stuck in an act, and not stuck as in like you've committed yourself to it, and you're doing these jokes for 2 years that are evergreen or whatever,
Yeah.
it all becomes about your emotional state because that's the only thing that's changing.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm like able to pick up on what they're doing and like we're able to make decisions together. But if you show up in a bad mood with the script, you turn on autopilot and you stay there till they give you a check.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I sort of feel like we all end up having to be a part of the flow, and trying to resist it actually creates a bigger issue.
Yeah. Yeah. And the fact that you are in the moment every time you go up makes it so that you're never going to have one of those experiences. You know, you may have a shitty day, but once you
Mhm.
get up there, you're trying to do something different, and you're trying to turn that shitty day into something better. And it that type of spontaneity, like I said, just works.
Totally, because like my act use is always about like my relationship, my family, like stuff that's happening to me directly or stuff I'm experiencing directly. Or back when I was producing shows in Chicago at the Playground Theater and at the Laugh Factory,
Mhm.
they're 10-minute walk from each other.
Yeah.
And I lived in the neighborhood. So I was really able to talk about my neighborhood, and everyone would have seen the poster on their way there. Everyone would have gotten the reference because they've,
Mhm.
you know, been around. So it's all these things that are so specific that, well, when it's your life, why wouldn't you be free with it?
Right. Right. Yeah.
When it's something that happened to you last week, why wouldn't you be a little bit, not about it? Like there's no
Uh-huh.
reason to be about it because you weren't there. you know?
Yeah, that's great.
It's sort of like it's why I feel like comedians are never nervous when they get married, because everyone's always afraid and has cold feet the night before they get married because it's like, oh my god, I have to like live the biggest moment of my life tomorrow.
Uh-huh.
We live through all the big moments of our life every time we get on stage because your relationship with your sister or your mom dying or that time you went to rehab is what's in your act.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. So we've been on for about a half hour. Everybody who's watching for Matt, thank you for watching. And the Behind the Bits podcast is on all the apps and at thebtbpc.com. Listen to the full interview because I am going to stop going live and we're going to get into the good stuff. And if you subscribe to the podcast, you'll get to hear it. And if you're here watching just for me, thanks for watching. That's great. So I am going to go off of live here.
Bye, everybody. See you on the podcast on audio